And this is What's the Deal with Brian Cohen. I don't know how many of these I've done now, but it's been a bunch. You would think I'd get a little bit more sophisticated with my backgrounds and everything, but people appreciate the authenticity that I basically sit in a townhouse and go ahead and have fun with this. So today I have with me Kevin and Rhonda Burns. And now you guys are 1 year post-transaction, correct? Almost to the day, if I'm not mistaken, right? I think we finished this up for you middle of June, and now we are in middle of July. So we'll call it 13 months later. And number one, thank you very much. I appreciate that you guys are carving some time out to be able to go ahead and do this with me. But I wanted to get you guys on, and Kevin, like I'd spoken with you from a couple of weeks ago, obviously it was a successful transaction. You guys are incredibly happy, but you guys come at the business a different way than a lot of clients that we've had. We have a lot of younger clients. They are, I don't say braggadocious, but they're out there. They're posting up a lot. They're pounding their hands to their chest about how great they are. And listen, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's fantastic. And obviously, what we found with you guys was you were a little bit more humble, right? And I wanted to have the conversation. You Kevin, how long were you in the business for before you got serious with what was going on?
Before I got serious with what was going on, or before?
Well, you're always serious with it, but listen, yeah. It moves in one direction and very quickly it heads up and to the right. So talk me through, how did you get into the HVAC and plumbing space to begin with?
Sure. So I started really young. My uncle owned an air conditioning business. Actually, I had two uncles in the air conditioning business who both learned from their father. And so at 15 years old, I contacted one of my uncles and said, "Hey, can I walk to your shop after school and start helping out? Just changing oil in the cars and cleaning up around the shop and whatever else it was." That was 37 years ago, and I never left.
A couple years ago.
Yeah.
And how long did you do that with your uncle before you took the next step into learning more? Or was it just a process? Was it a 5-year process, 10-year process? What did that look like?
Yeah, it was just a gradual process. Within a very short period of time, I was actually out on jobs already with some of the guys doing install. By the age of 18, I went to one of those Carrier crash course service technician classes, and was in my own truck at 18 running service calls. So it just progressed from there, and I worked as a service technician for the majority of my career, but then started doing some sales at some point, started doing some of the work in the office and so forth, and so just kind of saw all sides of the business throughout that period of time.
Interesting, because I hear that from a lot of folks, by the way. It's not like all of a sudden, hey, all of a sudden I want to be a business owner, and an HVAC business looks like a good one to be part of, right? It's a process. How old were you when you said, okay, it's time for me to go out on my own? It's time for me. Were you still working with your uncle at that time?
Yeah. And so he was aging. He was ready for, looking for an exit strategy for himself. Rhonda and I had both been there for almost that entire time, because she started only a year or two after.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we worked together through that entire career. And I don't know, maybe something like 15 years ago, we sat down with Bob and had a conversation, 20. About 20. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Had a conversation about how could a turnover happen. And so he just gradually started turning over some of the shares of the business. We were already incorporated at that point. And allowed him for a nice retirement that allowed him to support his lifestyle and everything while not having to be at work for about 10 years, basically, was our arrangement with him. And so, yeah, that was but yeah, I never left. So I literally worked at that same company from 15 until now.
And when you started putting that together, how big was the business? How many employees did you have at that time?
We really didn't change in the number of employees much. So we were probably around 15 employees at that time. And, and we were only, we were about 20, I guess. Sorry, we live on a flight path, so you can hear airplanes.
No problem.
But yeah, I think we were about 20 when we sold the business. So it didn't grow drastically as far as the number of employees.
But you got more efficient with what you're doing, right? Yeah. You brought in some different processes. So your uncle basically was running things old school,
right?
Yes,
per se, right? And then you just and Rhonda, what was were you handling the office? What was what were you doing in all of this?
when I first started, it was just me and Bob, and he would, handwrite all the proposals, and
Right.
yeah, it was really old school. There wasn't the internet, so I did payroll by hand. I did the accounting, wrote checks by hand, old school. And then as things started progressing, we started doing, computers were getting more evolved. The internet came out. We started using that aspect more. And he had hired somebody else to come into the office to help him. That didn't really work out so well. So I ended up taking over that position. And then I ended up just running the office and managing the service department and the maintenance department. And
Everything, basically.
everything. And then install department. And then I got some help and trained one of my employees who is still with the company to this day. She started when she was 18, and she stuck with me that whole time, and I trained her. And over years, we grew in the office as well. So then I, eventually became the general manager. And as Bob exited more, I continued to, with Kevin, run the business from that aspect.
Wow, what a heck of a yin yang, right? You guys were covering it from both ends. So you're building a business, you're working together all these years, building a business, family, all the other good stuff that comes along with this. What did that all look like? Because this isn't easy stuff. And a lot of people can respect and appreciate what it takes to run an HVAC business, right? There's a time of the year where you're sitting around saying, I need work. And then when the work happens, it's, oh, wow, we're at this 18 plus hours a day. This is fun and we're making money, but this has got to end so I can start to breathe again.
Yeah, we started out, we weren't married at the time. We ended up becoming really good friends, and then ended up getting married. How that goes. After a year later, which was wonderful. But we had from that point forward, because we did work together, everything was together. We had a very strong policy that we left work at work and home.
Nice.
So our goal always was work had its place. We were not the people that were working 20 hours a day and killing ourselves to work. It had its place, and we did what we had to, but we also had a life, and we would come home and enjoy that life together. So it kept, there was no mix of that. And we had to keep it that way so that it would be successful on both ends.
Yeah, but not only the business, but more importantly, our marriage. So a lot of people wonder when they hear that we worked together for 35 years full time, and spend every waking minute basically together. But
right.
Many married couples and just think, how do you do that? But I think that was a big part of how we accomplished it, is making sure we maintained that separation, and remember that work was there to support us and our livelihood, not the other way around.
Yeah, you had a great perspective on it, and I appreciate what you said, and I hope that everybody listening hears this too. And I talk about this quite often. I did a podcast not too long ago with Lynn Wise, a friend of mine who owns a company called Contractor in Charge, and we talked about growth, right? And one of the things I said, when you keep these businesses really between $3.5 to $7 million in revenue, that's where you wind up being your most profitable, right? You don't need these non-revenue generating positions in your business. All your people, right? Almost on a first name basis. It's more of a family look and feel. The hope is obviously that they stay around longer because of that, and it creates a better sense of what you want to create within the business. But your profitability can be a lot bigger at that point in time, and your lifestyle could be not as crazy. But listen, we do all size transactions, right? Smaller ones, bigger ones, everything in between. When you get to a certain size, you've got to run this thing like a business, and you start to run it like a business. Sometimes employees become numbers instead of people that you were growing this on the backs of, and it's not the easiest thing to go ahead and do. So I definitely appreciate that, and I love the fact that you said, "Hey, family is going to be the key here." So this became, I would say, a lifestyle business, but the business became a different type of vehicle for you than it did for others. For some people, hey, they want these mega this, that, and it's an ego play. And I always appreciated the fact that wasn't where it was for you. There was a goal that you had in mind and said, "Hey, we've achieved it. There's some other stuff for us to go ahead and do." And I know now that we're as we had discussed from earlier, your year passed, we all reconnected at a Service Nation Alliance event, out in Palm Springs, where you started to say, "Hey, it's time for us to be able to go ahead and look to do this." What was the little click that said, what, we've been successful for a long time, maybe it's time for us to go on with the next steps of our lives?
Well, about about 5 years before that meeting with you, or maybe slightly less than that, we had sat down together and said, hey, it is time to start looking for something else. We wanted to be able to have more free time in our lives. We'd already started kind of that process of maybe pulling away from the company just a little bit, maybe working 4 days a week or 3 days a week at certain times of the year, and so forth. So we knew that was a goal for us eventually. So we laid out a 5-year plan, and I think that was really beneficial for us. We tried to put on paper, where we wanted to be over, at the end of each of those years during that 5-year program, and what did our company need to look like at the end of that point to be saleable, and those kinds of things. So by the time we met with you, we had already had a very good idea of where we wanted to go and what we wanted to do. Just we didn't really know how to accomplish the last portion of it,
Right.
as far as finding a buyer.
I love that. When you sit in on all of these meetings and all these events, and now there are just so many events every year, and it's great that there's so much free information available to contractors, across the board. But you said two things there that I think are incredibly important, and one is sat down, you came up with a plan, and you put it on paper, right?
Yeah.
And then you measured against it to see if you're moving in the right direction. And so many people don't. They say, hey, I want to go be this $20 million business. And listen, I talk to these guys 10 times a week, right? I want to go be a $20 million business. How are you going to do it? I don't know. Right. You don't go from 1 to 20 overnight. It doesn't work like that, especially in this space. It is a time, effort, and energy game. It takes time. You got to have the people in place. As you build, there's a process to it. But I like how you have that set up. And if I'm not mistaken, you're big with the church, correct?
Yeah, we're Jehovah's Witnesses, and so we spend a lot of time in our ministry. That's one of the big reasons that we really wanted to move away from the business, is so that we could dedicate more time to that.
So now you're a year out from the business. I don't remember off the top of my head, how involved are you with the business still?
Not at all. Yeah, we literally had a month or two of involvement post transaction. And even that was really quite limited. It isn't like we were in the office on a regular basis. Every once in a while, they still give us a call and, hey, how does this particular thing work that just popped up, and they haven't had any experience with it yet. But and we have a really good relationship with the buyers. So, we certainly don't have any problem with that. We've told them from the very beginning, call us anytime. But yeah, very little involvement at this point with the business.
Sure. So it was a full sale and a full breakaway. Sorry, Rhonda.
As I say, and that's how they wanted it too. And because of our, with the process of dealing with them over the almost a year of working on closing, we developed a good relationship with them. We really felt like we chose the right company, and most of our employees are still with them, so it worked out really well, and it was a really nice transaction, and we're extremely happy with it. And what we promised to them, or what we sold them and told them what the company could become, has come true for them too. So I feel that they feel the same way about us, as far as what we sold them. We sold them a good company that could grow.
Yeah, I love it. And you held true to what you were telling your employees as well. And I get that question a lot. Listen, there's two different types of transactions. Well, there's multiple ones, but the two main ones are, hey, I'm going to sell a portion of the business. I'm going to stay on. I'm going to have a partner. We're going to grow this, and here's where we're going to go. And the other one is, hey, I'm done. I want somebody to go ahead and run this now. I've gotten to the point where it's time for me to go do some other things. And we don't do as many of those, the type of transaction that you did, as we do the other ones. But I'm thrilled to hear the success with it, because you get these folks out there that get these rumors that, oh my God, this buyer X, Y, and Z took over. They ran all my employees out, and they did this and they did that. And I hear these things, and I sit down and I'm like, who sold your business? You're interviewing the buyer, right? The same way the buyer's interviewing you. We sat with a number of people. You had enough conversations back and forth. You got to look at the portfolio of companies that they had. You got to get an idea of what their plan was for your people, because you cared about your people. You had some pretty long tenured employees with you, right?
Yeah, Elise, or in the front office, was with me, still there, but over 32 years. We had most of our employees were over decades,
Yeah, we had, I think we had at least 4 or 5 employees that were like, yeah,
20
more
plus.
than a decade, yeah, a couple of decades, but, and then a lot of other employees that, still long term, 5, 6, 7 year plus employees. So we definitely cared about them a lot, and that was one of the most challenging things for us as far as the sale of the business, is to just grapple with the mental aspect of, how will they be cared for? Will they be successful? Will this be good for them? Will this be bad for them? So it was nice to be able to interview multiple companies and really get a feel for who we wanted to be able to care for them going forward.
And that was very true, because there were we interviewed with several companies, and we both knew right off the bat that a couple of them definitely were not for us. No matter what they offered to us in money, we cannot see our company, which was a family-owned business, going to those people. We wanted somebody that was going to purchase a company that could help honor that legacy, and they have done that completely. So we're extremely happy, and I think that's why it's important to use somebody like you guys that you can trust in. And for us too, we didn't just meet you one time at one of the service roundtables meeting. It had been years that your company had been there, and we saw you, and we knew all along that we would eventually, we knew what avenue we would go to when we decided to sell, and that would be with you guys. So it was really, I think, a smart move on our behalf to get a good broker to help us with the transaction.
Well, I appreciate that. And doing this as long as I have, and being involved with as many transactions as I have, there's really 2 things that come out of this. Either this is a business move, right? Where, hey, I'm going to maximize out what my dollar is going to be, and to hell with anybody that's left around, right? Business first. Or it becomes, hey, I'm going to take care of everybody. Let's make this a win-win-win. And I got to tell you that the deals that are win-win-win, you don't hear the bitching and moaning post-transaction, right? Because you didn't look at it from just your perspective. It was, hey, you got your perspective. You want to make sure that the buyer's happy with the deal as well, which obviously happened. And you want to make sure that your people that are going to be staying around, because you've known them for so long, that it's good for them too. And I really appreciate that. That's not how it always is, but I'm happy there was, in this scenario. Some of these things, hey, it's business, right? I got an EBITDA number. I want to max my multiple. I want to max my bank account. And this is the direction we go in. And I think, to go back to something you said from before, you were able to talk to multiple people to understand that there are options out there. Rhonda, I can't tell you how many I'm dealing with it right now. I've got a couple of these guys that are these sub $10 million companies that are trying to go at this on their own. And I'm scratching my head, and I'm like, you don't know what you don't know. And you're going to know it after the transaction, when you realize the transaction is not going to fall out in your favor. You got to be protected, because still it's a business transaction, right? And people have to be protected. And if you're not getting, this should probably be my mantra, but if you're not getting multiple offers, right, or talking to multiple people, you have no idea if the deal you're getting is any good or not until you have 2, 3 offers, 4 offers maybe. If you hadn't had enough conversations with folks, there is a chemistry fit in this that becomes important. You hit the nail on the head when you said, listen, it wouldn't matter what the number was from the first 2. The company that we chose was the right one for us, regardless of where their number was going to be. It was going to be the best fit for everybody. Probably 35 to 40% of the transactions we do don't necessarily go to the highest bidder. It's not always that. It's, what does the chemistry fit look like? Because either you or your employees are going to be with this partner, for a period of time post-transaction. So it becomes important that everybody, still moves forward with a smile on their face, or at least they're keeping the boat moving in the same direction that you guys have pointed in for as long as you have. It's mind-blowing to me. You get one opportunity to do this transaction. The last thing you want to have happen is your transaction's over and you go, okay, I can't wait for my non-compete to fall off so I can go do this again because I made this mistake, and this mistake. And we hear this from some of these guys.
It's not us.
No, you scratch your head and you're like, why didn't you call me? What's funny is a gentleman in the space has become a very good buddy of mine. We didn't even do his deal. We didn't even handle his transaction. He called me a year after transaction, to have a conversation about, is there anything that he could do? And we wound up becoming pretty good friends over it. He's like, man, and if I was doing this all over again, I wish I would have used you guys. And for a handful of folks that have not chosen us, I keep in touch with everybody. I want to find out what life's like post-transaction. And they're like, I don't sound like the guys you interview.
Well, one thing we talked about too that we thought was, by using you guys as our broker, we felt like we had, everything was done correctly. It was a good legal contract. There's attorneys, and our tax attorney that helped us actually ended up quoted us a price and it coming in way lower because he said, hey, I didn't have to do as much work. It was really easy. And that was really super nice. Really appreciated that from him. But when we walked away, we knew everything was legally done correctly. And that was really important. And, the money, this isn't a project that happens, in a couple months and you're done. This was a year-long process, and it's a lot of work. And there's a lot of demands. You're trying to still run a business. I had multiple reports that I had to do, not just once, not just twice, 3 and 4 times, and not just 1 year, but up to 5 years. It's a lot of work. I wasn't really prepared for that, but the guys helped me so much. I mean, there were times I had a meltdown. I have to be honest with you, and I couldn't do it anymore. And I would call and speak to Darcy in the financial part of it, and he was so loving and so considerate and helped me, walk me through it as I'm crying on the phone because I don't know what I'm doing. It was great to have them and Ben was the same way, constantly good support, because there's only so much Kevin could do to help me at that point. He helped a tremendous amount, but there was only, he couldn't do that aspect. So having the support of that and knowing that I was able to get through it and made it all the way to the end with the support, at the end, I felt accomplished. I have to say that.
Well, and I think the other thing she was driving towards there too is, with the legal aspects of everything and knowing that a contract had been done in such a way that it protected us. Obviously the buyer needed to be protected as well, but we've left that transaction with confidence that we're not going to have some liability come back on us, or that we're going to find out that we owe a bunch of money in taxes that we didn't know about, or some crazy thing like that, right? So it was just nice to know that everything was done by the book.
Yeah, well, and you hit the nail on the head. These are sophisticated transactions. You're talking about multiple $1-million transactions. They don't happen overnight. From the buyer side, right, private equity side, these are institutional investors. They're going to bring in third-party attorneys. They're going to bring in third-party CPA firms to go through your numbers. They're going to bring in other folks to check it, right? You think about it, right? All your insurance has to be in alignment. They got to go through and do all the legal diligence to make sure there's no skeletons in the closet. Then you've got the third-party CPAs going through all the numbers. And I appreciate what you said about Ben and Darcy. They're absolutely fantastic. Darcy's been involved in God knows how many hundreds, if not billions of dollars worth of transactions. So has Leona, so has Fred. They know it has to happen. One of the reasons why, and I'll give my 30-second little elevator pitch here. One of the reasons why I've been so successful is we know what we're doing. So when a buyer knows that we're representing a particular client, they know we've vetted the numbers. They can count that the numbers are going to wind up being good, and they can take their best step forward, putting their offers together and through the negotiations, knowing that if they happen to win the transaction, the probability of it closing, because we've done so much diligence, is incredibly high. And most people don't get that because, fortunately or unfortunately, we've made it look easy over the years. But a lot of these PE guys, they've got 5 to 10 of these going at any one time with the hopes of just closing one. So you have to think of the amount of money they are spending to pursue these other opportunities, to try and get a deal done that does not happen. It does get expensive. They got third-party legal they got to pay on their side too. These things cost a lot, hundreds of thousands of dollars, on their end to be able to get these transactions completed. And like I'm saying from before, it's a sophisticated transaction. There are a lot of workflows. When you come on as our client, we're going to audit everything. I want to know where your EBITDA is down to the penny on that particular month so that we're clear, and then we talk about, okay, here's where we think this is going to land. Let's forecast out where you guys think you're going to be over the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and make a determination on when it's going to be best to go to market based upon what the current multiples are, and then you start moving through that. And it is a process, and you got to talk to a lot of folks. but we know who most of the buyers are, which makes it easy to bring a number of them in to have conversations with you. And we kind of know what they look like post-transaction too, to be able to steer you in the right direction. Listen, we know kind of sometimes who's going to wind up being a fit, who's not going to wind up being a fit based upon our clients. We love this. This has been another exciting year for us. Next year will probably be another exciting year. Let's just get through the election at the end of this year first, see where the dust settles, and kind of go from there. But now that you're a year out and you've spent more time, being involved, back in the church, where does the next year go?
Kind of, we have probably just the same. We're not, unfortunately, Kevin's parents are aging. Both my parents are gone, but his parents are aging. Bob Jenson, who owned the company, he's in a facility now, which, I try to going to see him as soon as I'm done here too. And then I have a sister that's in a subacute that's been very sickly. So that's kind of where we're at right now in life. We're just going through that aspect, continuing our ministry and caring for our family, helping our friends as much as we can. I think that's pretty much.
And we're enjoying some some
travel.
aspects of retirement as well. We've traveled a little bit. We spent some time over in Europe in March. I had a good time over there. Went for a wedding, and that was
nice.
That was a lot of fun. So it's I don't want to say it's play by any means. Since retirement, because life just makes you busy.
Yeah, busy.
People always ask us, "Oh, yeah, what are you doing with your time?" It's like it's crazy. It's like, how did I ever have time to work? Because I'm busier now than I was before. But yeah, life keeps us busy for sure, and we're enjoying it that way. We don't have any huge aspirations or goals as far as certainly not business wise. We took what we did with the business, we exited it with no debt. We've made some good investments since then, and hopefully unless something crazy happens, that carries us right on through. So we're just looking forward to enjoying life.
Yeah.
I couldn't be happier. If you were doing this all over again, or if you were giving advice to anybody looking to go through the process with their business, so on and so forth, what's one nugget or piece of advice that you would give them?
Well, I think for our business, it got to the point, like you brought up, that Bob did things old school. That's how it was done back then. We did things old school. And then success groups started coming around. It first started out with ISL, then Airtime 500, and then, Service Roundtable. So we got involved in that group with ISL early on, and we learned how to grow the business, and the aspect that we didn't want to grow as far as size wise, but we did learn a lot on how to work smarter, not harder. And that really helped us. We implemented not that we had 100% procedures, because we didn't, but we implemented what we could implement with the employees, get everybody on board. We always treated our company like family, which we love dearly, even to this day. And we implemented those success groups and continue to go. We invested money into ISL for a period of time. We invested money into Airtime for a period of time. Then it got to the point where we stopped it, because we're like, okay, we don't need this anymore. But we did join Service Roundtable because they kept it in front of us all the time.
Sure.
But we joined those groups to make ourselves more successful. But people say, well, when they go, they're overwhelmed. We were told by one successful contractor, take one thing that you can from each convention and apply it in your business. Not the 50 things you heard, the one thing. And we did that every time. We took one thing and applied it to our business, and it helped make us successful.
Yeah. Those things made a huge difference in our company. And like Rhonda mentioned, we weren't interested in growing our company into a massive beast. We knew what we could manage and what would allow us to maintain a happy marriage and
sleep at night.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So we wanted to keep our business at the size that it was, but we wanted to be profitable in that respect. And so for us, that made our business very saleable, because we were talking about this last night. We had about a $3.5 million business at the sale point. 3.65. Yes, there's our numbers person. But we did that on about $20,000 of advertising. We
Amazing.
had such a good reputation and had treated our clients and our people so well that we just really didn't have to advertise even to do that level of business. And that was super impressive to a buyer when they came in. They saw, here's a business that can grow, and if they wanted to grow it. We had to actively work to not grow our business. And so, that was our perspective on the business, but, already in a year, they've doubled the revenue on that business. So, they took it right to the next level right away. And, that makes us feel good that, hey, we sold them exactly what
we promised.
Yeah.
And I remember telling Darcy, I don't understand, what are they looking for? What are they digging for in all these numbers? And he said, well, one of them is your advertising, because you do only have $20,000 on the books, and they're certain that there's money somewhere that that you're
right. Didn't make sense. Sure.
It didn't make sense to them, and that was one of the first questions. Lauren sat there the whole time and said a word through a big interview. That was the first thing he asked us: how in the world are you doing this on $20,000 of advertising? And I told him, if you've been in business for 40 years, you better be doing that, or you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And he just smiled and he said, you're right. So, and that was very impressive. But once Darcy explained that to me, oh, I see. They're trying to make sure there's no hidden things. And those are things that are important, because I would going back to dealing with Darcy and Ben. It's, you can't talk to anybody. You're in a confidential, you can't tell your family, you can't tell anybody. And that can be hard. So you do rely on the people that you can talk to about it, which is not many. You're each other and you guys. And so that was very helpful to always have somebody to get answers for, and to at least express thoughts and feelings during the whole process until you can share that with your friends and family.
And I would say another, just kind of a nugget, or at least a learning experience for me was, going into this, our business was very transparent. Right. I mean, we didn't hide anything with our business. We didn't hide things on the books. We didn't take money out of the company and spend it on personal things. We weren't remodeling our house on the business, all kinds of things like that. Right. And they search for all that stuff. They will find it, if that's the case. So, I think a nugget is, hey, don't try to hide anything. Don't go into a transaction thinking, oh, that they're not going to know that, we have all this money on the side, or whatever the case may be. They're going to find out, so just go into it honest, and recognize that this is a very thorough process, and things are going to come to the fore if you try to hide them. And I think that made our transaction very successful because of that.
Yeah, because we didn't understand what is it, ad backs? Is that what that's called?
Yeah, ad backs.
What the heck's an ad back? I mean, that and the form, that was so much work, and I called up Darcy and Ben, and he said, explained it, and we said, no, we don't do that.
Yeah.
We honestly, truly don't do that. I would barely buy myself some toilet paper. Costco, I don't buy for myself. I could have, nobody'd ever know, but I never did. So it made our transaction really easy, because we kept our home and business completely separate and didn't run our personal things through the company.
Sure. And some people do it and they commingle, and listen, it's not right. It's not wrong. It's whatever the choice of the owner is. But to point you made from before, Kevin, is when they're looking, right, they're looking for a consistency of an answer that is right. Because as soon as they see one thing that's out of whack, that you really can't answer, that's not making sense, then they start looking for another one. If they find another one, we need to start bringing more people in this equation to have a deeper dive of what's going on here. And to the credit of Fred and the team that he's assembled around here at SFMP, we know this. Like we're diving in. I want to know, right? In our conversations, we want to know all your problems now. Like, let's have a conversation of what they are, so that we can be clear on how it's going to be told to the buyer, right? Frame, not nice that they're going to see it anyhow, right? But is there a reason why A, B, or C happened? And if there is, what's the backup and what's it look like? And let's disclose it, right? You don't need to. We've gotten in these scenarios over the years, very seldomly, where somebody has tried to keep something as suppressed as probably suppressed, but it always comes out. And once it comes out, it's a big sit down on this is information that's necessary. It could derail your deal. And these are emotional, right? Once you make a decision and move forward, you start getting the paperwork together in your mind, the business is already sold. You have a time frame on it. This is okay. 90 or 120 days or whatever the number is, this is going to be done, or 6 months, whatever it plays out to be.
Yeah.
The most frustrating thing is you go through this emotional roller coaster ride and you don't get the dessert at the end. You know what I mean? Because something got screwed up during diligence. You're like, oh my God, I got to go through this again. And there's been scenarios, unfortunately, where that's had to happen. So I agree with everything that you've said. It's easier just to hear it all is up front. Let's have a look through it. But to me, not to some buyer that you're not being represented with, because trust me, to the buyer, this is a business transaction. And if it's $1 they don't give you, it's one more that stays in their pocket. And if there's some flip that happens down the road, that dollar can turn out a lot more for them. Make sure that you get what your true value is.
Right? And that's very true, because, that's one thing that your company did for us, was make sure that we got every dollar that we could. If there was an area that they wanted to hold back, or they said this, they would come back, and they were always at bat for us and trying to, your goal was to get us as much money as you could.
Of course.
And that was really good. And we saw that. So that was good.
You get one time to do this transaction, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, you want to do it right, because once you're done and on the other side of it, the last thing you want is any problem. You don't have the business to claw back out from, to use to claw back out of a problem anymore. So yes, I agree with that. Well, I really appreciate your time. I know you got a lot going on in retirement.
I got a workout class to go to.
I love it. Good. Well, have a fantastic workout. It was great seeing you guys again.
Well, thanks
That's
again,
good. Yeah.
Brian. Yeah, nice working with you guys, and thank you so much for all the
support,
everything
and
you did
everything
for
helped
us.
To get our goal done. Because let me tell you, I wasn't going to try to do that again. It was too much
No,
work.
one time.
One and done.
Yes, either we're making this happen or we're going to keep running the business. One or the other, right?
That's exactly right. And when you can't tell, and you can't tell your employees, the work does fall all on you. So it does really make you think, okay, we're doing this correctly, so we can be one and done.